What's up, guys? Today I'm going to show you how I turn some particle board from IKEA, some threaded inserts, and some tape into the ultimate quad form epoxy mold. So I use this particle board from IKEA. It's melamine basically, but I can't find melamine in any of the big box stores near my house. Someone was selling this on Facebook Marketplace, and I thought it would be the perfect solution instead of using MDF. The reason for that is because I'm going to be putting threaded inserts into them, and I didn't think the MDF would hold over time. So this is a trick I use to make sure I cut on the right side of the line. And right now I'm cutting the lengths and widths of the actual epoxy form. You can see it coming together pretty quickly. And here I'm just marking the center between the forms. This step was kind of unnecessary because the whole idea of the form was to be flexible and be able to do different dimensions, but I did want to make sure I at least had the center marked before I went further. So at this point, I'm just marking where I want the threaded inserts to go, which I will show you a little bit further on in the video. So now you can quickly see how it's shaping up. And here I'm just transferring those marks for the threaded inserts from the bottom to the walls. And I'm doing it some more, just in case you didn't see it the first time. So now I'm marking the center of the walls because I want the threaded insert to be in the center of them. And then I'm going to mark the center of the actual board here in order to make sure that the threaded insert matches where the bolt is going to go. Just some more of me marking the center on all of those lines so I don't miss any holes. And a small drill bit just to make sure I really lock in that spot perfectly. Over to the drill press to mark for my threaded inserts. This was just easier. I really wanted to make sure that these holes were 90 degrees and didn't leave any room for error using my drill press. Here's another angle here. I went way deeper than I had to. Just figured if I ever use longer bolts, wouldn't want to have to redo it. And here you can see me drilling the holes for the thread inserts on the walls. Again, I tried to use a pilot bit as much as possible just to make sure that those were perfect. Here I'm using a little bit of CA glue and accelerator to lock those into the particle board. It's not the sturdiest material, but I wanted to make sure it lasted for a couple pours. And me just making sure that all of my math worked out in the end. I was a little unsure, but measured twice, cut once, really held true this time around, which is not normally the case for me. I did not use threaded inserts on the middle walls, mainly because I wanted to be able to flex those dimensions based on the wood that I was using. I used some Bidwell wooden iron epoxy form tape. So if you didn't know, epoxy does not stick to anything like packing tape or this kind of high gloss tape, I guess you can call it. This stuff worked really well to prevent the epoxy from sticking, but it was a pain to apply. It would fold over itself really easily. It was really thin, so it would get caught, which is not easy to apply. But in terms of doing the job that it was meant to be, preventing epoxy from sticking, it worked really well. So I put that on the bottom so the epoxy doesn't stick to the whole bottom, and then I taped all of the walls because I don't want the epoxy sticking to the walls. And I used a screwdriver here just to poke through the threaded inserts and the holes that they're going through. Went to the 12-volt drill, low impact. I wanted to make sure I didn't over torque these bolts into those threaded inserts because I knew that material was not thick. So on all the middle walls, I taped both sides because epoxy was going to be on every side of them. And then I just set them in there. Loosey-goosey right now. They didn't really even have to be perfectly square because the wood that was going in them was square. So they just had to be in place temporarily. I used a little bit of silicone with a glove for the first time in my life instead of using my finger. Applied it. I'd probably use a colored silicone in the future so I could actually see if my gaps were sealed. And then it was the easy part, the mixing and pouring of this O-Login epoxy. This is their Login 2, so it's up to 2 inches. It's incredible stuff. Really good results without bubbles, any of those imperfections. The mold came apart perfectly, just like I had kind of intended here. These boards were pretty awesome. Now in the future, I think I'll design a little better way to clamp them down to remove that extra epoxy loss underneath. But that was kind of secondary for the gain of being able to pour 4 epoxy forms at once. I retaped as necessary, so any part that looked like I scraped it or peeled up a little bit, I just taped over in preparation for the next round of epoxy. So here I am, kind of putting those thread inserts back together. You actually can't see that because the camera's on the wrong side. So the first round of pours was all walnut. This was some mahogany, some willow acacia, and some Indian rosewood. These were some really pretty woods to work with. Back into my house where it's temperature controlled, pouring some different colors. I stick to the blues and the blacks and grays when I pour epoxy, so I wanted to try a little something different with this login too. Here I am deforming it or demolding it the second time. It came apart just like I planned for the second time and worked perfectly. From this angle, you can see why I didn't use the threaded inserts on the middle walls, because I wanted that wood to tell me how wide each board should be. If it needs to be a little wider or a little narrower, then this is where I can kind of flex that. This Indian rosewood just did not want to demold. I can't stress enough how easy and helpful it was to have 4 epoxy charcuterie boards being cured at one time. This really made my craft fair preparation way easier. Of these 8 boards, I sold 7 of them at my last craft show. They really are popular items and they sell so fast. If you learned anything from this video or just enjoyed it, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. See what else I got going on in the shop. Thanks, y'all. One final shout out again to Olog and Epoxy for creating an incredible product and sponsoring this video. Thanks, Jake.